Is that concrete?
So the space was a creek that I grew up playing in, and for the installation, I think there were a few different ways I was thinking about it. One of them was just the sense of the kind of layers of space within the creek that I experienced within a fairly small area, and in that, you know, reflectivity and then this kind of interactive quality of the space that I would always be drawing on the boulders to create the space for myself and imagine it, you know, to be different things, and then the play of kind of shadow and light, and I guess like every element of the space was temporal to different degrees. Like the water was constantly moving, and then, you know, of course the light and shadow, there was a lot of play and difference. But then the boulders seemed rather fixed, but annually they would shift because it was in California, and so there would be a big rush of water, and every year there'd be kind of a new configuration to the creek, and so a new form to play with. And so in the installation, you know, I wanted to kind of work with the layered quality in a small space, and then also the material of charcoal was something I started with early on, because I was just thinking about kind of the role of charcoal in relationship to water as filtering water, as it's used for filtering water, but then also that we use it for drawing, and of course also for fire. And so I had this idea, and this part of it I think probably does not work well, but it was that the charcoal might be able to absorb water, and then when it got hot, to release water, and so you'd have kind of the process of, you know, you'd have kind of the full cycle of water in various states, and then it could condense on the screen. So that was all a little bit ambitious, and I don't think really is operating in this yet, but is something I'd like to play with. But then as I worked with the charcoal more, I became more interested in just the kind of play of light and shadow, in the sense of something floating that was, of course, always present in the creek, playing with, you know, small pebbles floating down the creek that you could then draw with. So, yeah.
What about the little bowls?
So the bowls were there as part of the experiment of, could the charcoal contain water and then release it, and then would it evaporate and condense onto the screen and catch in the bowls. So that was part of that idea. So I also have a spray bottle, which I earlier tried wetting down the charcoal. Just sort of interesting to look at, but I don't think the whole process is, you know, quite happening.
Cool, the light hits the water.
Rainbow.
Yeah.
It does absorb a lot of water. It goes away really quickly.
You need a thermal imaging camera.
Yeah, and it's cooler back there after you spray it. If you go behind there, it's...
Did you try soaking them?
I did.
What does that do?
Well, they absorbed a lot of water, and then, and of course, but I'm kind of amazed at how much you don't see it on the surface after a while. They do get more crumbly, and that was an important part of choosing charcoal also, was that, like, you know, it would change over time and degrade.
Like the willow sticks of charcoal, if you could find a way to, like, I guess
Red
you can't
them?
red them, but like because they're directional, that
Yeah.
water might start, like if it
Dripping out or
condensed,
something?
then it would follow the foam down or something.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I wet them, which made them easier to kind of try to puncture, but then it also made them crumbly, so I ended up drilling all of these, you know, with a small drill bit, because that was the only way to do it. That made a lot of charcoal dust.
He just took 5 years off you.
I don't know how you stayed so clean in that process.
I didn't.
There's an incredibly
didactic aspect of the project, and it's really enjoyable to be able to, kind of go through the experience through your works, that you actually used charcoal in so many ways, or you saw it as a material that you knew all these qualities about, so it's an adaptable material, but also very playful in the manner that you described it when you were, a kid, I guess, and the fact that we're drawing with it and that you're displaying it, I mean, it could be a piece of art, but also at the same time it's got the quality that you can interact with it really easily. And that comes out incredibly strongly in my perspective, in my view.
I think the layers of the shadows, well, the charcoal and then the shadows of the screen and the charcoal on the screen and the charcoal on the paper behind it are really effective in getting across that sort of concept of the water and the boulders. Because when I picture a boulder in water or in a shallow creek, it's got all these layers of shadows and stuff happening below the surface, and you're not quite sure if it's happening in the sky or happening like on the ground of the creek.
Did you try putting like a clear layer in front of it?
I tried, I didn't try a clear layer. I tried trace and screen in front of it and ended up deciding to put it behind, which I originally was planning on having the screen in front, but yeah, that'd be interesting.
You could put them in, like the charcoal was in a bowl, so it was sort of absorbed the water in the bowl, and then was in like a box of the screen. Like I wondered if it was much smaller and more contained, and then the condensation was on the outside of the box, and then it flipped back into the bowl and then into the charcoal.
Yeah, I think to get it to, I think like, at some point it was interesting for me, like deciding between how much to get it to try to work the way I had originally thought maybe it could, or to go more with the sort of sense of the creek. And so it was, but I would like to play with something like that to get it to work.
Well, you think if you had more time and if this was actually like a building application, that there could be some materials that would be these scrims. That whole role is to have this absorptive quality, and then like kind of how steel next to concrete ends up leaving a patina. But this one, I don't know if you could capture it in a larger scale with a longer time frame, maybe it would. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, do you have to take that down? You can just leave it out for a while.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens if you leave it up.
I mean, there are materials that we build with. This building's built with them. I mean, all the brick is essentially doing exactly what the charcoal is doing. And with some brick, it's actually soft enough that you can draw with it as well. But I wonder whether it's the disconnect between the source of the water and the charcoal, and then enough water and enough surface area for you to get that condensation on in a closed environment. I think it's both experiments. You've got an experiment that is now diverged. You found two paths. You can take each one of those two paths and you're going to find other diversions that are probably there. But you, I think, could also try to find out about the science, about exactly how that works. Because if you, we can make brick, essentially clay masonry, in all different kinds of shapes, so that you may be able to soak a brick, soak that brick, keep it soaked in water, have it aspirate as air pressure essentially soaks it out of the top, and create that cool environment that you had back there without the spray bottle.
Right.
So I think there's something there that's worth getting at. So there's 2 or 3 different avenues that this experiment could go on, and whether they end up adding back together or not, who knows? It's an experiment. But I think the science is worth trying to understand why it didn't work and how it might, just as much as the effect on your memory and our seeing something beautiful. Maybe not seeing quite your creek, but seeing something as beautiful as that creek. Both are worth pushing.
It I was thinking of this in with regard to the greenhouses, and how if you had a negative air movement into space beyond, how is it the cupola houses always work, that bring the air
Yep.
in and out?
Yep.
That would give you another layer of cooling effect.
In a more controlled
Yes.
environment.
Has to be controlled.
Yeah.
Surrounded, I think. I mean, right now, the humidity, although it doesn't quite feel like it, is incredibly low for this time of year. All of us know that we haven't had any rain, so everything here is going, moisture, I'll take it. And to get it to go to the screen, which doesn't necessarily want it, because it has no way of pulling it, is be very difficult. So I think you'd have to challenge not only the charcoal, but all the other materials to see exactly what you wanted. Maybe if the screen were chilled, it would
Right.
For what?
were chilled,
Would make the water condense more.
condense. So then you'd be able to see the water, but how far it would make it jump before the air that's already dry gets sucked away, don't know. But see, that would be important to understand from a phenomenal as well as from an environmental standpoint.
Is chiller the excess water from like condensers or whatever? Is that cool, or is that usually warm? For a building, big building HVAC systems, if you have to reroute.
It's hot. Well, it depends on
Right.
the time of year. I think it's always warmer. But still, it's a source of water, so you can make it condense, gives you a pool, that can be dripped back down to here, then it gets used again.